from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good Monday morning. Amy Jacobson here. Chris Kroc in for Dan Proft this week. Good morning, Chris. How you doing? Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. I'm doing well, thanks.
He's here from Dallas, but grew up in the area. So, and you've been in radio for what? How many years? 20 plus?
Since graduating, actually before graduating. So, like summer of '95, interned at WABC Talk Radio, which used to be my sister station here in Dallas. The NWS in Chicago, which has fallen off a cliff several years ago.
Yes, we don't say that name. We just say the station up the dial.
Well, it's not worried. They don't even show up on any, and nobody's listening anyway.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so Trump's red line for Iran. President Trump spoke yesterday on Air Force One while he was returning from Mar-a-Lago back to the White House. Oh, my gosh, he was golfing on Saturday and Sunday. How could he? While people were losing tens of thousands of dollars in their 401k. But he talked about Iran and a direct deal and what the red line is for them.
I think it's better if we have direct talks. I think it goes faster and you understand the other side a lot better than if you go through intermediaries. I think they're concerned. I think they feel vulnerable, and I don't want them to feel that way. And I think they want to meet.
He wants to make sure that Iran does not make a nuclear weapon. He sent the Supreme Leader a letter. But what was in it? With that and much more, let's welcome back to the program Stephen Bucci. He served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, as a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Quite the resume. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Amy. It's good to be back on the show. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Trump's red line for Iran and the letter that he sent to the Supreme Leader, what was he offering in the letter?
Well, he's offering not to go in and smash them, either economically or physically, if they'll stop their process of making nuclear weapons. Seems pretty reasonable to me, but we'll see where they go. Remember, the president, sees himself as a supreme negotiator, and he's a pretty darn effective one, in my opinion. But the Iranians, or the Persians more specifically, are known in the region that nobody ever wants to negotiate with them because they always win negotiations. So he needs to keep it, be at the top of his game when he's dealing with these people. They've eaten American negotiators for lunch several times under Democrat presidents, and hopefully this time we'll get their measure, and maybe we can get some degree of stability in the region, because Iran is the biggest problem for instability in the entire region. And so this is a problem that warrants the president's personal attention.
Well, what's the timeline on this, though?
He is not, and I don't know the timeline, but it's sooner rather than later. The Iranians are, most of the intel folks think they're pretty darn close to being able to make a pull-up effective device, but there's always the fudge factor of, can they deliver it? Just because you have a bomb that will activate if you were standing there on a test range and could set it off, that's not the same as putting it on the top of an intercontinental ballistic missile or even an intermediate range ballistic missile and fire it at a target and get it to work. There's size constraint. These things are very sensitive, and it's a tough engineering problem to solve. So I don't know, and hopefully our intel people do, that the degree they're down that last road, that engineering piece of it, once they have an actual device, can they get it onto one of their delivery means effectively to use it? So we might have some months left, but this is the right time to engage with them. So I'm glad to hear the president is moving that up to one of the front burners.
Stephen, Chris here, and a couple of things. I ran this morning, I'm sure you've seen the newspaper that's the voice of the Ayatollah, basically. The Supreme Leader calling for firing bullets into Trump's, quote, empty skull. He's way out of line any day now in revenge for the blood of martyr Soleimani, Qasem Soleimani, of course. A few bullets are going to be fired into that empty skull of his, and he'll be drinking from the chalice of cursed death. I wanted your thoughts on that along with this. I don't think that Iran's going to stop the nuclear program from everything I've seen. You know a lot more than I ever will. But, like, I have this envisionment that, number one, you know that a quarter of our B-2 bombers are sitting right now at Diego Garcia Base in the Indian Ocean, and that's a very, very long time not happening and rare thing. And then I have this feeling that, honestly, again, you know more than I'll ever know, but within a year or so, I honestly think that we're going to have to hit them with those 30,000-pound bunker busters that the only plane that can deliver that's a B-2. And I'm wondering if you think they'll put an Israeli flag on that plane and let the Israelis drop the bomb based on kind of who would do the attacks.
Our B-2s are fine where they are. Now, we got to deal with the Brits and the stupid idea they're having about giving all this stuff away. Other Brits think that's nutty. We think it's nutty because we've got the base there. We can move those those aircraft to other places. But the aircraft are not a big issue as far as their capabilities. They've been maintained properly. They're one of our cutting edge delivery means for these devices.
Right.
Whether we do it with bunker busters, which I think would be the preferable way to do it, or with smaller nuclear devices, if it gets that close, or if the Iranians detonate something before we hit them, I think you're liable to see the response be nuclear and not just bunker busters. All of that, the propaganda from the Iranians, they talk almost as much smack as Vladimir Putin. So what some of their officials say and the way they say it, all the poetic, violent rhetoric, just par for the course. That does not signal any sort of change in their position. But remember, they're gonna go after both ends of the spectrum. They'll say, "Oh yeah, we'd love to negotiate. We want peace." At the same time, their officials are talking about, shooting into President Trump's skull. They're still ticked at him about Soleimani. He was a hero. Great operation, righteous hit, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. That man deserved to die. But we cannot underestimate the danger of dealing with the Iranians when they have a theology that if they can destroy Israel and America, who they have designated the greater and the little Satan, that they think that'll kick off their version of the Muslim apocalypse. So for them, that's a good thing. Everybody else in the world goes, apocalypse? No, we should work against that right now. But the Iranians are, nope, wait, this is what we want. So they were very dangerous, very unstable from our point of view, bunch of folks. I'm not saying they're clinically crazy. I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, so I can't make a determination. But compared to you and I and the way we would do the analysis, they're coming from a different location. So very dangerous, very difficult to address. But again, President Trump, he seems to like to get into these kind of negotiations and discussions. He considers them a personal challenge, and I think he's ready to deal with it.
Stephen, the Houthis, of course, in Yemen, this is the greatest amount of attacks on our naval ships since World War II, and according to some of the folks there with the Navy, they've attacked recently the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier and several U.S. warships in the Red Sea. They've also shot down 3 of our U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drones since March 3rd, which is crazy. And I love that Mike Waltz called them Al-Qaeda or ISIS with advanced cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, some of the most sophisticated air defenses, all provided by Iran. Trump is pounding them mercilessly. We saw the video of a bunch of leaders gathered in a big oval, and they were sent to their dirt nap with Allah, which is great. But Trump saying the Houthis have been decimated by relentless strikes over the past 2 weeks. How decimated are they, and what's going to work to end this? And to me, it seems like Trump has said he'll go after Iran if they don't stop this. How's this going to play out based on what Trump's doing now, and what do you see in the future with it?
Well, I think the Houthis are going to find themselves a negotiating chip here pretty soon on the part of Iran. We've hit them really hard. The Israelis have hit them really hard, and they still seem to have an awful lot of missile capacity still there, all of which comes from Iran. The Iranians, again, are really the key to instability or stability in the region. If they continue to mess around and give away this weaponry and encourage these people to do mischief, they will. If they shut them down, they won't have the capacity to do it anymore. So Iran is really the key. And, look, I'd be happy to, carpet bomb all of the areas the Houthis live in. I'm sure that people will say that's a terrible attitude.
No.
Well, these people are nutty. They continue to fight at attacking anybody who drives by the region. I mean, it's not like they're being particularly discriminating in what they do, and they need to go. The fastest way to do that is to get the Iranians to shut them down. But the Iranians are just so hooked on this use of proxies because it's been so effective for them in the past that I don't think that's a likely short-term result. Maybe down the road we can get them to do it, but in the meantime, they need to be shut down. And I think, together with the Israelis, we ought to take them down physically so that even if the Iranians get more cooperative, the Houthis can't go freelancing on their own, because this is just unacceptable. It's interfering with the global supply chain, not to mention killing, a lot of people. So we got to get that done, and it needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Stephen Bucci, Army Special Forces officer for 3 decades, top Pentagon official with the Heritage Foundation. I got to ask you one more thing on Ukraine. How do you see this playing out from where we're at right now? It's been kind of quiet, quote unquote, at least for the past several days or so. It doesn't seem like much is going to change. Putin still has his unlimited amount of forces to conscript and send against their will. Got North Korea. Where are we at now with the Trump negotiations? Doesn't seem like we're going much anywhere right now.
Right now, the ball is in Putin's court. Trump has laid down what he wants done with both sides. The Ukrainians seem to be willing to cooperate. I think they would rather continue to fight if people would fund it and give them the means. But they recognize that's probably not in the cards, right? That there's some war weariness from all of the donor states to that. And frankly, there's a lot of it in Ukraine. They do not have unlimited means. They got a lot of really brave folks willing to fight, but there's also a lot of mothers and wives and daughters who are saying, enough's enough. We need to bring these guys home. The Russians are feeling that also, but Putin has a much bigger control over the news, and he really does own all the guns, so he can make people participate whether they want to or not. So Putin is going to have to pay a price to get it in his head that he's not going to get everything he wants. He thinks he's going to, mess around with Trump the way he did with Biden and Obama. And I thought he understood that that's not the case, but he seems to be, playing them, dangling them a little bit. And I think that's a mistake on Putin's part. And if Trump is, Zelensky found out if you cross Trump, he gets ticked. And when he gets ticked, he's not Mr. Nice Guy anymore. And I think Putin may find that out as well. I hope it doesn't kick off into something bigger. But, Putin needs to be convinced enough's enough. Take what you got and walk away, but don't think you're going to turn around in a week and start grabbing the rest of it. But we'll see where he goes. Putin is a hard man to convince of anything because he really does have some delusions of grandeur. He really thinks Russia still is a superpower. It's not. It's about a third-rate power, but they do still have nuclear capabilities. So that's problematic. It's something we can't just cavalierly write off. But President Trump's trying to convince him otherwise.
Wanted to ask you one more question before we let you go. Ukraine's rare earth minerals, how's that negotiation going? It's a form of payback since we have given them billions of dollars.
Yeah, I think they understand that has a two-edge to it. One is we would like to have control of those rare earth minerals and we don't have to worry so much about China's monopoly on it. But they also recognize that if America has a stake inside of Ukraine, which we would if we were managing and were the beneficiaries of those rare earth minerals, that is, frankly, the security guarantee that he's looking for against Russia. So hopefully that will continue in a positive way. That's sort of the ace card from our standpoint, where we can get as close to a win-win out of this as I think is possible right now.
Yeah, it's the least they could do.
So hopefully it's going in a positive direction.
All right, Stephen Bucci, we're going to have to leave it there for today. You served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer. Thank you for your service. Also a top Pentagon official, visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Thank you so much, Stephen. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. If President Trump wants to secure a national security legacy that will never be other than history changing, the time to do so is fast approaching. President Trump has drawn a